I read a book, I didn't take any notes, and I'm going to talk about it. I read Stephen King's It for the second time in my life. Still stands as one of my favorite books of all time. It's definitely, in my eyes, Stephen King's greatest work. It and The Dark Tower are like my two things that when I think of Stephen King and what he's capable of, those are the two things I turn to. If I could suggest a book for anyone to read of Stephen King's, it would be It. It's not because it's a horror novel necessarily. It's like disturbing in parts, and the parts that are disturbing are mainly because of like humans involved, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. When I get into the spoiler section, I want to say that this is kind of like a fantasy epic, and I know that in The Stand by Stephen King, which I do have a copy of here, I don't have my copy of It because I gave it to my friend because I fucking love the book and I want as many people to read it as possible. But yeah, I know that in The Stand that Stephen King was trying to write kind of a fantasy epic, and that came before It. And I feel like It is like a condensed version of this. Well, not condensed, but what I mean is like it's like more like
To live in a mystery.
Like focused version of The Stand. It is a similar type of deal where you're going against this big bad evil that is kind of supernatural. Group of people getting together, you know, falling in love with each other. With It, you're going to get more of a coming of age story, more of spending time with kids, growing up in the 50s, which is always a good time, you know, like if you're a fan of like The Sandlot or Stand By Me, which is based on The Body by Stephen King, not Sandlot, but it's got like that vibe of like a group of kids getting together and they're up against these great odds, but they're also like going through like, you know, getting hormones for the first time or getting a first crush or going up against bullies or growing up and facing it with your friends. It is what Stephen King was trying to do with The Stand. And I know that a lot of people think that The Stand is Stephen King's best work. I won't disagree with you in that. I just, in my personal opinion, is that it is basically Stephen King firing on all cylinders and doing what Stephen King does best with writing kids, writing character, writing dialogue, writing humor, while also keeping you on your toes the whole time. On a second read of this book, it was even better the second time. It really kept me pulled in the whole time, like all the, even with the adult stuff. And I remember like really liking the flashback scenes and figuring out what happened to them back then. But this time I was really invested in the beginning portions specifically of the adult stuff. Not so much when they get, you know, when the adults kind of start on their journey, but like the beginning of them all coming back to Derry and getting called. So anyway, I think we better move into the spoiler section for the rest of the video. And spoilers. So we've got this group of 7 friends who start off as kids, and you know, kids in Derry are haunted by Pennywise, the dancing clown, who is actually a supernatural being, interdimensional being, who kind of feeds on fear. The more he scares you before he eats you, before she eats you, it's a girl, and she's pregnant, then the better that you taste. Clowns just happen to be one of the things that is the most feared by children universally. But I think that was just kind of like, you know, it was very good, like this awful thing that is a clown, is a killer clown, you know, really good hook for a book. But that's like, coming into it from the first time, before I read it for the first time, it was really weird to see how much, like to find out that it was a shapeshifter and not just like a clown, because my whole life I was like, oh yeah, Stephen King, the clown guy with the evil killer clown. And to find out that it could take whatever form suited it for its next meal was definitely like surprising. And to find out later, you know, I think like towards the end, like what it actually is, like, as a spider, you know, a giant spider, that was kind of that was weird too. But I don't think that shit matters. I think that really what pulled me through this book and made it such like it was a book, it's like 1,200 pages in paperback, the one that I had, and it's like this big, and I could not put it down when I read it the first time. I think was all of the mystery and not knowing what it was. You're mentioning these things from the past, like the deadlights, and wanting to know what happened to them when they were kids. Like, oh, what is this shit? And that, you know, all of the kids lost their memories when they left Derry after they beat it for the first time, and like kind of getting little tidbits of like, well, what are the deadlights? What is this ritual of Chud? You know, all this shit in like italics that would just like Stephen King would do this neat thing that I liked, where he'd just do an M dash, like another M dash, deadlights, and then M dash, and then back. Like he would interrupt a random sentence of narration and insert like one of those words as foreshadowing. And I thought that was really brilliant. Like when I was reading it the first time, I was like, what is it? And of course, it wouldn't have worked if he hadn't set up, you know, the fact that like these kids, you know, something happened to them when they were young. They're coming back as adults, and like they're remembering certain little bits.
We got tiny of lasagna.
And, you know, you're getting the breadcrumbs. And so then when you see the little like interrupted sentences, interrupted narration with the word, and then you have like a little bit of context to go with it, is just all he's really good at that. When he, I don't know if I want to say if it's when he wants to be, but and that's just how he is, I guess. You know, I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and it was like she was talking about like Jodi Picoult, and I was talking about complaining about Stephen King, because it's like every like 1 in 5 is like, whoa, I couldn't put it down, I couldn't get enough of that book. But then, like, you know, I read 4 more that are like desperation. Not a fan of desperation. First half of desperation is good, second half is like, what the fuck, just why? She was talking about how, you know, like these authors have these certain formulas, and I know that Stephen King doesn't work with like an outline, but I think that he does fall into certain patterns, which is fine. It just feels like sometimes it's a little forced, or he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna bang out my 2,000 words today, and I can't really think of much else. It was written in a 4-year period, I think. At the end, in Stephen King's end note, it was like 1981 to 1984 or something. It's 3 years. I don't know if those were the correct years, but it was like a while. And so I think that he really like took his time with this book. And you can feel that in the way he sets all these different elements up. Like the plot is like cooking and cooking and cooking on every page. We have Bill Denbrough, Stanley Uris, Beverly Marsh, Ben Hanscom, Mike Hanlon, and Richie Tozier, and Eddie Kaspbrak. Oh, yeah, I got them all, dude. Okay, so that's all 7 of them. Bill Denbrough, at the beginning of the book, he's in bed, he's sick, and his brother, he helped his brother build this like paper boat or something. It's George Denbrough. And he sends his brother, Bill can't go outside with his brother. It's like raining outside. And so George goes out there and puts it, you know, in like the gutter, the street gutter, whatever, and sends it sailing. And then he meets Pennywise the Clown, who's inside of a drain, and says, well, Georgie, don't you want a balloon, Georgie? Fucking pulls him through the sewer grate. That starts the story, and it's kind of throughout the book, every time Bill is like confronting Pennywise, it's very much like it has to do with his brother being killed and being murdered when he was young. And like a lot of the stuff that Bill goes through with his mom and dad has to do with George, with the absence of his brother. And it's like, you know, there's like this just coldness in his house ever since Georgie died. And like, it's just like, you really, really feel for Bill because, you know, he stutters and he's got this dead brother. He like tries to get his parents to pay attention to him, to like love him. And he like wants to yell at them and they're just like completely numb, cold because they lost a kid. And, you know, Bill, who's like to his friends, he's like the shit. He's the leader of their gang. They adore him. And his parents are just like, yeah, whatever. It kind of reminds me of South Park. Honestly, this book reminds me a lot of South Park. It's the same thing on South Park where nobody ever believes the kids and they're always just kind of like, oh, and parents are fucking stupid and the kids are like, all right, well, we got to take care of it. So every time that Bill is confronting Pennywise, he's confronting the fact that his brother was taken from them, and he's confronting, you know, his parents' coldness. I think there's a part where he's even like, you know, you took away my family, and I know he says like, you killed my brother, you fuck.
Didn't you kill my brother?
When that line hits, it gives me chills every time. Then we have Eddie Kaspbrak. He has an inhaler that is just, it's water and I don't remember. The pharmacist just puts this stuff to taste like medicine in his inhaler. And he's known this his whole life. And at some point, Eddie goes in there and the guy's like drunk or something, the pharmacist, and he's like, you know what? Tastes like medicine or something, I don't know. But he tells Eddie that it's not actually asthma medication. Eddie's mom is the one who like makes Eddie think that he has asthma.
Oh, you are sick.
Yeah, Eddie Kaspbrak's mom is like, to me in the book, one of the big villains. Like there's Eddie's mom, there is Henry Bowers and his gang of kids, the Belch Huggins and Patrick Hockstetter, those guys, and you have Eddie's mom, Pennywise, obviously. You know, later in the book, when they're kids, Eddie breaks his arm, and I don't remember where he breaks his arm at. He's in the hospital, and his mom sends his friends away. And there's like this moment where Eddie can feel them like go away or something. You feel this thing where like the 7 of them are connected, and like magically united against this evil force of Pennywise. And so there's like Eddie's like knocked out, like in the hospital bed, and he's got a broken arm. And then his mom sends his friends away. When he wakes up, he says, Mom? She's talking to him, oh, Eddie, blah, 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 saying all this shit. And he's like, Mom, did you send my friends away? And he stands up to her, and it's like, oh my God. And it takes forever in the book for him to finally stand up to her. And when it happens, it is such a great payoff that he's like, don't ever send my friends away. She loses it. Eddie dies at the end of the book. Oh, so sad. Oh, so sad. That's something this book just does so well, is it makes you care about Eddie's death so much, because I mean, he went through all that shit with the aspirator, and like he fought off it because he believed the aspirator worked on his asthma, and so because of that, it worked on Pennywise. Like this idea of like a child's belief, like an imagination is just as powerful as its like fear and manifestation of fear. Like it's the way you fight against it. And the adults coming back to Derry, and kind of, you know, Bill, who went away and became a hotshot author and lost his stutter, is now like coming back. He starts to get his stutter back as these memories come back, and like they're using the same type of skills to fight against Pennywise, and like, you know, kind of like as a like background subplot, like work out their trauma while they're at it. Beverly's got an abusive father. I forgot about him. He's another villain. Worry a lot. God, it's just so terrible. She like thinks about her dad taking her around town and like showing her things in nature, and like, you know, he doesn't drink, he has no vices, and you know, it's very like it's pointed out that like he doesn't have any vices, but his vice is having two women at home, his wife and his daughter, who he controls in every way. But even still, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do any of that stuff. He's very abusive physically and emotionally, but he like, she remembers him being nice and being sweet and kind and gentle to her and taking her around. And that's like one of the most heartbreaking things about this character and this relationship, is that she knows he's abusive and awful, but she's also like hooked into him with these like good things as well. But, you know, then later, her being hooked into her father, turns into an abusive marriage, and that part with her husband, I forget his name. When she's an adult, when she gets the phone call, Mike Hanlon's the guy who always calls or who calls them all and says, "You got to come back to Derry. We got to take care of this thing. It's happening again." You know, it's been the 27 years, I think it is. But Beverly trying to get away from her abusive husband, who like will only let her smoke cigarettes sometimes, but as it's got to be under his control. Like, now you can have a fucking cigarette, you know. Her getting away from him was such an intense scene. Like, it's one of the most vivid scenes I've read all year. Like, not being able to put the book down, and yeah, it was just really, it wasn't fun to read, but it was like, it was intense. Like, had forgotten how she got out of it, so I couldn't stop reading it. And then we have Stanley Uris, who kills himself, and I cannot help it in this book when Stan kills himself, being like, I know that it's to like show the fear and like how awful it is. Who would want to go back? Why wouldn't somebody kill themselves? Like that, it totally makes sense. But both times that I've read it, I was like, wow, Stan, you suck. You suck so bad. And I think that's just because I feel like I'm a part of the Losers Club. And so like one of the guys like killed themselves, and I'm coming back to face this awful fucking clown.
This is about what you didn't do.
I'm like, yeah, like I'm not even a little bit sad for you. I am just pissed. I don't love Stan. And that's why I love the scene with Stan where he like reads off the bird names, and that's how he gets Pennywise to back off. Mike Hanlon is, he's the guy who stays back. His story is really sad because he has to remember all this stuff while all of his friends go off and go away, and they're all sterile, and they all are fucking rich and like really successful, except for Mike. Mike stays, and he has to figure all this stuff out, that like all of his friends are magically sterile, all of his friends are magically successful. And it's happening again, and it happens every 27 years where it wakes up and starts eating children again. And then he has to be the one who calls them all back. And he's a librarian, he's a writer, and you get a lot of these interludes from Mike Hanlon that are interlude 1, Derry. And I really love the way this book is structured, how you have these interludes coming in and just giving you these little bits of world building, of lore that has to do with it, and all the different ways that it has shown up in the town and caused devastation. It really helps increase suspense, feed the mystery of what it is. Gives you just like, it's like a slow burn of like, here's a little bit more of like these people acting shitty because it is around, because the magic of it is kind of out there. But like, I like how most of the book, this stuff is kept close. Eddie, went off and he became a driver for famous people. But he married his mom, much like Beverly Marsh married her dad. He still has all his medication. Richie Tozier, Trashmouth Tozier, is a radio talk show host who does all these voices, just like he does when he's younger. In the audiobook, when Richie does the Irish cop voice, it is like, it's so spot on when he does it when he's when they're facing Pennywise, and Pennywise is like, what the fuck, like when Richie like nails an impersonation, Pennywise is like shook. Oh, it's I fucking love it. And with Bill, when Bill, you know, is like, he thrust his fist against the post.
You got to believe me, woman.
And still insists he sees the ghost. And Pennywise like steps back or whatever. I want to come back to the idea of beginning to end. At the end, you find out fully what the monster is. You get all the answers that you're looking for the whole time. I think that the book, It, is a classic example of how when you show the monster, you immediately deflate a lot of the tension and the mystery. That's why I think it's great that you don't understand until the end of the book. You know, and I think that is why, to me personally, as an adaptation, it doesn't work. Obviously, you can't make a movie that's as good as what you imagine in your mind. You know, there are great examples of adaptations like Dune, Lord of the Rings, I think are great adaptations of books. What I'm saying is that like for a book like this or a book like Bird Box, it doesn't translate well to film because what is so scary and suspenseful is just what you can't see and what you cannot figure out. And so with Pennywise, the moments where you see Pennywise in the book are not scary. And I feel like in the film adaptations of Pennywise, they're banking on that shit. They're like, okay, we gotta show the clown being fucking scary. And I'm like, that's not scary. That's not what's scary to me. I don't think that this book is scary. I didn't think it the first time. I didn't think it the second time. I thought that there were disturbing parts, like I said earlier, and I'll get to those in a minute. But Stephen King takes the method of amnesia, and you could say what you want about using that as a storytelling method, but it is done well here. He didn't know who he was, shit like that. Yes, it is a trope, but this is just a good way to do it, and it's a good example of how you can take amnesia and use it to really build up your mystery. Like I said, with the M dashes and the deadlights and the ritual of Chud, like going down into the barrens and underneath the clubhouse and smoking themselves out, and seeing the interdimensional being come down from the heavens, and like getting just little tidbits of this fed to you throughout, and like seeing I have my two turtles. Seeing like the little pictures of turtles like on Bill Denbro's, I think it was a like turtle figurine down his basement steps, I don't remember, but like seeing those and being like, what's that turtle about? And then like that would be something that would be italicized, and the turtle couldn't help us. That was one of them, where you get all these little things kind of thrown at you as you're getting these Mike Hanlon like interludes of Derry in 1954 or whatever the fuck, and this is what happened, and somebody saw a clown. All of these little pieces of it, and then you're like, okay, yeah, it's not scary, but I still don't know what Pennywise is, or I still don't know what happened to the kids, or how they beat this thing that like seems unbeatable, or that no one else can see but them. How these 7 kids did this before and scared it, and why they're back, and how are they going to beat it this time if they couldn't beat it before. Keeping the monster away until the end of the book is really just it's done well here. So then when you get to the end and you find out that it is a spider, and that the way that you fight it is by staring into its eyes, and it takes you into this like different fucking plane of reality.
Don't you want it? Don't you want it? Don't you want it? Don't you want it?
Where you see the turtle and it's like, what's up, dude? I can't do anything for you, but I'm like here on the side, and I just want you to know that, yeah, you know, I'm here. And I threw up the world at one point or something. And then you have to like bite down on Pennywise's tongue. And it can like throw you. It like throws Bill like way out there at one point. And like he gets like almost lost, and like Richie has to fucking save him. And I mean, Richie's the best character in this book. I think both times it's Richie that's like actually fighting it. When you get to that, and it's like fucking wild. It's just like, I love it. I love picturing like them biting on this tongue and then like flying through this like this in-between place of in-between realities, and seeing a giant turtle and having to like, you know, do jokes, do riddles with Pennywise. That's really cool. I like it. But I think that if I would have known that, you know, going in the first time, it would not have been as impactful of a story, because, you know, the mystery, the curiosity is what this book is really all about. It's not about the answer. It's not about the ending. It is about the big chunk before the ending. That's where this is a masterpiece, and that's where it won't let you down and it keeps you reading. Some of the things that I did not like, I did not feel like the scene was necessary at all. On the second time, I was like trying to figure out what it might mean. There was like something said about that being the way that you can connect to other humans, or become one, like it's something like about being enlightened. Like, I know that I've read in like spiritual like literature about, you know, sex being a kind of way to get into a state of oneness with the universe. And I think there was something said in that scene about that, from one of the points of view. I don't remember who. It doesn't really matter. So I think that maybe that's where King was trying to go with that, was that their quartet, their group was like breaking apart, and so they couldn't find their way out of the sewers, and so they had to go through this ritual to attain this state of being one with the universe.
You did not have to do that.
To then bring them back together, and then they all get their kind of like little magic powers back of like, I think Eddie was the one who could like knew directions perfectly, and they're kids though, so it's like fucking weird. And I'm like, I don't need it. Why? That you could have used a ton of different things. I don't think we'll ever have an answer to this question. It doesn't matter. So that was a little disturbing. The other thing that was like disturbing, that actually on the reread I skipped over because I remembered it and I did not need it. I did not need to do it again, was Patrick Hockstetter smothering his baby brother with a pillow. And like, it was, the King does this with babies. There was a baby in Salem's Lot that was like getting punched. A baby in Mr. Mercedes that something happens to, that I won't spoil. I cannot abide by reading about babies getting hurt and shit, like as motivation for hatred towards a character. Because that's all it fucking was like, okay, yeah, here's Patrick Hockstetter, and yeah, not only is he like doing a weird like jerk off of Henry Bowers, and like, you know, gets beat up for it by Henry Bowers because Henry Bowers is a dick. Not only is that happening, but like then we got to go into this segue of like, yeah, and Patrick Hockstetter did this to his baby brother and killed him with a pillow, and you're like, oh my god. And then he's like gets eaten and devoured by leeches. It's like, and then it tells you how he's scared of leeches, and that's the one thing that he was ever scared of. And then leeches come out of the fridge Pennywise turns into a bunch of leeches and kills him, and you're like, you had to kill the baby to get me to care or get me to want this to happen, or what the fuck ever, to build up a villain. Anyway, didn't need it, skipped over it this time. Henry Bowers stuff, the main thing that I remember, it wasn't really disturbing. It's just like, you know, where he cuts the H into Ben's stomach. I mean, it was a very memorable scene. I really like the rock fight scene in the Barrens between the Losers Club and Henry Bowers' crew. The stuff with Beverly and her dad is pretty disturbing and was hard to read. Not so much the stuff with Beverly and her husband, because I felt like it was more of an empowering scene where she was escaping from him, where she like actually stood up for herself and was like, no, I'm fucking going to Derry and I'm going to take care of this shit because I made a promise. And yeah, I felt like that was like a really good early on like redemption scene. So then you carry that with you throughout the book of like Beverly, you're like, you know that she's a badass and she will stand up for herself. And she did, even though, you know, you're doing these flashbacks of going back to when she wasn't standing up for herself. That's why that wasn't as disturbing. But yeah, when she's with her dad and like that stuff, hurtful. Look, guys, there's so much stuff in this book that I would love to cover, but I'm already running at like, you know, 30 or 40 minute video. And so I'm going to have to cut it. But let me know what you think of it. Let me know if you think that there's a reason that we need scenes like the ones I described that I could have done without. And I really feel like, you know, like Stephen King says, the Dark Tower series is his Lord of the Rings. I really feel like it is his Lord of the Rings. And I feel like it's all there in one novel, and it's him doing what he does best. The monster is not what you're really going, it's just a part, it's just a piece of it. You know, it is like Sauron. And which is just in the Lord of the Rings, just an eye, or like this kind of like being or presence that's like kind of distant, far off, you know, and it's like mysterious. As far as the Losers go, they only come into contact with Pennywise so many times. For the most part, it's like indirect, or like you know, they're being chased by him or something like that. But yeah, I love this book, and I hope you love it too. That's all I got. Bye.
Don't you want it? 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 Don't